healthcare system is broken, but it doesn't have to be. This is Revenue Cycle Optimized by Infinix Healthcare. We discuss the latest challenges in the revenue cycle space and provide actionable tips on how to overcome them at your organization.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode. My name's Stuart Newsom, and as always, I'll be your host. Today, we're discussing prior authorization verification using the follow-up AI agent, and actually, it's going to be a demo. We all know what happens when we do demos. We're going to have Jonathan Aguiar join us today, and he's actually here. He's actually led a conversation internally for our team, walking through this workflow in detail. And so today, we just thought it'd be good to bring it live to all of you in a demo format so that you can see how prior authorization verification actually works in practice. So before we get into the demo itself, I'll frame a little bit of context of what we're going to talk about. But first, Jonathan, how you doing? It's been a minute, but about a month since you've been on here. But I know I see you about every other day.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure seeing you, Stuart. Even if it's a month apart on the live session, but yeah, doing well. No complaints on my end. I appreciate that you called me the demo guy because that's what I refer to myself as anyway. So.
Right. So yeah, demo guy, solutions engineer, anything that you need to know about prior authorization, eligibility, everything on that front end, patient access. Jonathan is the master. I know he probably won't admit it because he's very humble, but he is definitely the master. He knows what he's talking about. And speaking of what we're going to talk about, I'll just kind of frame it a little bit before we actually dive into a few questions, and then we'll jump into the demo. But prior authorization friction often shows up downstream with denials. It's still, believe it or not, the number one denial, or one of the number one denials that always tops the list, and which is, to me, just always seems like an oxymoron. That's the purpose of prior auth, right? But it tends to be there. So, and the issue is really where sometimes, the rendering providers are frequently dependent upon the referring provider to initiate that authorization when they place the order. There's that assumption that hasn't been filed, hasn't been initiated, and many times it hasn't, and the ball gets dropped. But the revenue impact lands squarely on that rendering facility because they're the ones performing the service. So in this session that we're about to go through, we're going to discover how that gap is managed in a structured way. We've sort of figured that out without overcomplicating the workflow or forcing any organizations into a broader, complicated solution than they need, actually. So with that, we'll walk through kind of the workflows first from a visual standpoint. So we do have a little PowerPoint presentation for you. Then we'll move into the live system so you can see how cases move in real time. So Jonathan, let's start with the first question. Who is this really built for? And what problem is it that we're really trying to solve on that the broader suite may not address for certain facilities?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay.
Yes. I don't want to be that guy who get 10 minutes in and like, oh, no one saw your screen.
Yeah. And I will make a note. I know that many people may not know this, but we repurpose our office hours for our Revenue Optimized podcast. So for those that will be listening to the podcast, just know that he's going to be as descriptive as possible with the slides that we're showing, so you won't be missing out. But if you do, you can always contact us. We'll be happy to share it with you.
Yeah, appreciate that context too. Okay, who and what is it for? So the general answer that I'd give is it's built for anyone who needs it. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer and probably very salesy, but basically anyone that would benefit from a follow-up product for prior auth in particular would benefit from this. The more specific answer is that we built it with rendering providers in mind. Some examples include PTOT practices, labs, imaging centers, basically any rendering provider who receives referrals and needs to verify that the ordering provider did in fact submit authorization. They are the ones that we built this for. But anyone who benefits from this, a conversation.
Awesome. So natural follow-up question to that is, if the full suite already handles prior authorization, why create a standalone verification workflow? Can you explain the difference and why certain rendering providers specifically benefit from this model?
Yeah, it's not a good sales technique to say, don't buy our whole product, just buy this small piece. But if you don't benefit from it, then we want to ensure that we're meeting the needs correctly. Not every organization needs a full prior authorization suite. Many facilities are very well equipped to handle determination and initiation, but follow-up can be its own animal. And it's not just follow-up with the rendering facility, it's also following up with the various payers, TPA systems, logging into portals. So it's a lot of manual effort and until that resolution is reached. And it's very time consuming and very inefficient. So we found that focus solutions often outperform comprehensive ones. Standalone agents will allow the customer to implement only what they need without adopting unnecessary features. And it's ultimately about matching the right tool to the right problem. So this product is distinct from our prior auth offering, which does include determination and initiation as well. It includes unique statuses, operates with two specialist types, which we'll get into, and has a unique follow-up workflow that's not exactly how our full suite works. So it's fine-tuned and customized just for the nature of follow-up.
Awesome. So before we move into the live system, that you're going to show us, I just want to clarify something that came up in your internal session that you had with the team. So where does the follow-up AI agent operate in this workflow? And how do the two core queues work together? The system follow-up queue and then the system outreach queue, because it's all about queues and that work orchestration. It's how the agents are also orchestrating among themselves and with human specialists. So how do those coordinated automation and human specialists work together?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, and it's a really important question. Oftentimes, you find that a lot of companies will say AI is a marketing term or automation and not truly know what that means because it sounds nice on paper. The way Infinix functions, and it's not just for this product alone, is we blend automation with human expertise. In healthcare, if you're just throwing automation at problems, you're going to fail because healthcare is too complicated. And that's not just for prior auths, it's not just for eligibility. All facets of healthcare involve PHI, involves multiple hands, multiple parties, real humans at the end of the equation. So you need to have humans in the loop across the board. So that's no different for this product. So this product's designed to configure client-specific tenants to ensure that each case is followed up via the optimal path, or path of least resistance is kind of a term I use frequently. And it's based on available payer connections. And it's easy to blame the payers, but the reason why it's difficult to fully automate across all payers is because one, there's a lot of them, and then two, there's a lot of technology that connects the systems as well. So you have to be able to cover all bases to say you're an actual solution across specialty. So that includes portal access, phone calls, API integration, and then that would sync automatically back into the source system, be it an RIS or EHR, EMR system. So like our other solutions, it's a tech plus team approach. We have a follow-up queue. That queue is dedicated to following up with the payers automatically. If a manual intervention is required, it will automatically assign that case to a human specialist, and they will get on the phone, go on the portal, et cetera, whatever needs to be done to get that finalized state. And then we have a separate queue called the outreach queue. This is manual, and it's where our team can reach out to the ordering providers directly. That way, the work is separated, and so we're not mixing up the various workflows. So the outreach agent does their job, the follow-up agent does their job, and it all works in one fluid system. And then we also offer hybrid models. So if an organization approaches us and says, hey, we got the provider outreach down, we really just need help with the payers. Not only are we customizable in our Patient Access Plus suite, we're also customizable within this product. So basically any organization can establish a standard operating procedure and say, this is where we need your help, this is where we do not need your help, and we're happy to fill in the gaps as needed. So if you need us to call ordering facilities, we'll do that. If you need us to call the payers, we'll do that. If you need one of the two, we'll do that too.
Awesome.
So I do have some flow charts here. I don't, and Stuart will hold me accountable to this. It's easy to be a tech nerd and dive into the inner workings of the engines, but sometimes people's eyes glaze over. So I just wanted to provide a high level overview, give you some visuals of how the process works, and just try to simplify it down before jumping into the demo. Because if I just go changing statuses on you, it's just going to be very confusing. So this first flowchart really sets the stage. So the 6 phases is entry and validation. So that means if a new case comes in or an existing case needs to be updated, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is triage. It'll determine which is the correct path based on the existing information. If it's path A, it'll be payer review. That means an auth exists. If it's path B, that means it's pending initiation with payer, and that means the auth is missing. So we would determine why it's missing or if additional information is required. Pending information is that 5th exception handling phase. So that would be when key data is missing when we receive the case and we need to enter additional information. And then finally, the final status, which is approved, denied, no auth required, canceled, expired, those kinds of status types. So flow 1, entry and validation. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to go into the weeds of what each step means, but just to kind of give you a visual, case comes through, it validates if the case information is up to par. If yes, move to phase 2. If no, it'll loop an intake review until that data is appropriately added. So it could be like a missing member ID or some patient information that's necessary to submit to payer or follow up with payer. That kind of information would be entered here. Triage is step 2. So this is the core step. So this is where our automation technology will look at the case, say, this is what we need, and it just starts assigning cases out. So in real time, it'll constantly sort cases based on that path of least resistance that I mentioned earlier. So if no auth, it'll mark it as pending initiation. If auth exists, it'll mark it as pending information, info missing. If it's finalized, it's finalized. That's self-explanatory. And then if it's pending, it'll mark it as payer review. The idea is to constantly feed these statuses back to the client because we want to ensure the client knows every step of the way what is going on. Because if we're just changing statuses and not feeding that information back, then it's always that game of, when is this case going to be completed? Did Infinex receive the case? So all these statuses are updated in real time. Path A, authorization exists. So the status would be still under review equals payer review. Once that payer review has been confirmed that they have it on file, it just loops back until it's either finalized or expired. SLA is based on the client's SOP document. So if they say, if it's date of service day, it's expired, don't do anything with it. But we do support retro cases too, if that's of interest to you. All right, path 4, this is a loaded step. Again, I will simplify. Pending initiation, we outreach to the provider if you want us to. If the provider responded, confirms that the case has been initiated, we will mark that status as initiated and then check the portal. If the auth is found, then it's finalized. If it's not found and it's not initiated, then based on the standard operating procedure, we'll take next steps. So if there's no movement, it's expired. If it's just a matter of, hey, sorry, we missed this, we'll just follow up with the provider at a later date until we get all our ducks in a line. All right, 2 more phases. Exception handling, pending information. So data was missing. What was updated is the natural question. If the auth is provided, we mark initiated. If the info was updated after this status, we update the case and then mark it as triage. And you can see here that the triage step is still the core step because it can flow back into triage as information is added. So our system isn't left to right. It's more circular. So it's always looking for updates. And once those updates are reached, then it lives in that finalized state. All right, last status. This is an easy one. Is it finalized or is it expired? It'll live here permanently. And with a connection back into the source system, we'll update the source system with whether it's approved, denied, no auth required, canceled, or expired past SLA. And we'll give you any relevant auth codes, reference numbers, approval letters, denial letters, the whole 9 yards. But this is a nice visual for a simple status. So yeah, that was a mouthful. Before I go into the demo, happy to engage here, Stuart.
Yeah, absolutely. And what this shows me is as you went into such granular detail about each particular flow and each status, it's very important. It's just a reminder. It's a lot to keep up with. It's complexity, even if you're relying on that referring provider. but it takes the guesswork out. It really gives, to me, I see a lot of, it just evokes confidence that yes, a prior auth has been submitted, because it's my revenue as a rendering provider, that now I have some faith, if you will, that this is going to get paid, that the prior auth is going to go through, and I'll be in the know instead of just working in the dark. And no one likes to be in dark, So the best way to gain confidence is to have knowledge, knowledge, and knowledge that you're gonna get paid really starts with, did everyone else do their job upstream, including that referring provider? And even if they did, because they may have, and they may still do that, but knowing that they did and that they do it correctly and what's the status of that even gains more confidence that you can go ahead and take care of the patient, rather than this is just one less thing you have to stress about.
Yeah, and this is one step of the prior auth process, right? So it's like
Right.
going back to that question of the standalone product, you can see in these 6 flow charts, there's a lot of avenues to take, and that's one step. That doesn't even include all that determination and initiation entails. And not only that, but if you're throwing eligibility verification benefits in the mix, it gets wicked complicated. So you want to ensure that if you're looking for Infinix to support, we got it. We're going to keep you updated, but we're going to do this legwork for you. We're not expecting you to understand all the intricacies of our system.
Right, right. And I think this is just, a godsend for a lot of practices out there. And it really depends on that flow. I mean, there's some rendering providers, when they get a referral, when they get an order in, they're the ones that are tackling that prior auth. But still, what is that referring provider doing, on the other end? Now Not only that it isn't being accomplished, but you're getting information real time, or as near real time as possible on what's happening. So again, no more guesswork. All right. So I think eager to kind of see what the platform can deliver for folks, and how that entails and how that actually materializes into reality. Just how easy it is to work.
Yeah, happy to get into it here. So this is our solution that we work out of. Now, if a customer benefits from utilizing this platform, we can also expose this system to our customers. But ultimately, we want to make sure it's as simple as possible for our customers. So some customers are like, hey, we want you to help us. We don't really want to get into a different piece of software with different logins, different training. So we prefer just a dashboard that lets us know, where the case is at. We can provide a dashboard that shows you the statuses, and that's it. Or if you have your internal staff and your enterprise level customer that's very accustomed to this workflow but just need a little help, we can build a unique tenant for you as customer, and you can use this platform on a day-to-day basis. And the benefit of using this platform versus just working out of your EMR or risk system is you're going to be able to have visibility into what our team's working on as well. So it's not just status updates, but who at Infinix is working on this. And as a supervisor, as a customer supervisor, you can actually manage both your employees and Infinix employees in this system. So this is the homepage. This is essentially where our human specialists live. When they log in for the day, this is what they see. And all of these cases represent cases that have been assigned to them. As you can see, the statuses vary here under the case status column. It could be an intake review, could be a triage, could be an already initiated case. So based on those statuses, specialists will understand next steps. So for example, if it's initiated, that doesn't mean there's anything more to do necessarily other than following up with that payer until it's finalized. So just to kind of give you a visual, so you can see who it's assigned to, the service type, the case status. If the prior auth entity is listed like United Health, Avicore, Avalon, you can see the physician's name. And then this is really the visual I wanted to emphasize because we talked about that follow-up queue versus the system outreach queue. Our specialist, if you want Infinix to cover both sides of the coin there, the specialist can actually be assigned to multiple queues. So let's say I log in for the day. I'm expected to follow up with the payer, but I'm also expected to follow up with the ordering provider here because that's the assignment that was given to me. Whereas in this queue example, I'm not expected to follow up with the ordering facility. I'm just expected to follow up with the payer. So it removes the guesswork as a worker to understand what my job is, because I just open the case and get my job done versus am I supposed to be, assigned to this queue? What's the work that's being done on the client's end? All of that's already established based on rules and all these various queue systems. So I do have some case examples. Did you have anything to add there, Stuart, before I continue
No,
diving in?
no, no, not at all. I think the cues are something that help us with that orchestration and where the work needs to go, and then who has access to that work. I think that's one of the backbones to how this makes all this so successful.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's how we're able to maintain that tech plus team approach. Because if it was
Mhm.
just a bunch of code, then there wouldn't have to be a user assignment. But because it's so manually oriented with a lot of the follow-up with phone
Right,
calls and faxes and portal logins, that queue system's key for user assignment.
right. And I like to
So
coin it as cognitive reasoning. It's almost like it's one less thing that your consciousness has to worry
yeah,
about, so and every little bit of that matters, because I think at the end of the day, there's people struggle with not exhaustion being tired, but just, oh, there's so much information, there's so many decisions to make. And if you could just eliminate one less decision, and
yeah, yeah.
what this queue does is it eliminates a lot of different decisions and just automatically falls all in place where you don't have to make a decision on what work you're going to do. It's right there in the order in which you
Right,
need.
right. Yeah, then you're able to hire people that simply execute. They don't have to
Right,
manage their work. They're just doing the job. And there are
right,
people that are very, very good and successful in a career because they are executors. And then on the flip side, you have people that are more oriented towards supervision, where they love assigning work out to those
right,
executors. So your job is to make sure the system is doing its job, and then subsequently that the people are doing their job. So it's like in an ideal state, it's a well-oiled machine where you're not having to
right.
play all the guesswork. And it may not seem like a lot when it's like, oh, I have to assign a case over, what is that, 5, 10 seconds? But then you extrapolate that out to days and weeks and months, and this can become extremely tedious. And humans aren't robots, so we get tired. So if you're sitting on the phone for 45 minutes, an hour, then have to hang up and then go over to your ordering physician, do the same thing. You might miss them. It's a lot of mental load. So we do a lot of that day-to-day legwork. Well said, Stuart. The cognitive load is a big part of this. So you can see here as an agent, I opened up a case to do some work. You can see that the status is intake review. So that means the case is still in that entry phase. I'm actually going to go through those steps that I mentioned in order so you can kind of see how the case develops over time. So an intake review, when I click status, you can see there's two status options. Either the case needs to be canceled if the appointment was canceled, for example, or it needs to be marked as pending information. The reason why those are the two options is because either the information is missing, so it's just sitting around waiting for initiation, or the patient canceled the appointment and there's nothing further to do. That's the only two options here in intake review. So I would mark this case as pending information. I would select the substatus, either the info was received or the info was requested, select a reason code. Let's say it's an email request needed, and then I can set up a follow-up date. So in this system, the case management is also, kind of a project management tool. So with the follow-up date, I don't have to make a note like in my notepad to say, hey, I should follow up on this case tomorrow. It's all baked in. So once I set that follow-up date, hit submit, it'll mark that case as pending information. I will log in again tomorrow and see if that information was received. If it wasn't received digitally, then I can give the ordering physician or facility a phone call and say, hey, we're missing some key information before I can submit this to payer. Or in this example, it's a follow up. So we're missing key information. Could you submit that to payer? So essentially, you're holding the ordering facility accountable to ensure that that prior auth is submitted appropriately. I caught myself talking Patient Access Plus Suite. In the event that we were providing the full service, we could initiate the case, but given that this is a follow-up product, we're really focused on ensuring that the ordering physician is doing his or her job. So that's one case example. This next one here is triage. So triage, like I mentioned, is the core status. This is where we follow those paths, whether an auth is found or not found. So let's say we found the auth and we know which prior auth entity it is when we select availability here. Selfishly, it's at the top of the list, so it's just easier. I'm going to select portal because they do have a nice portal, and then I'm going to select next. Once I hit next, it'll automatically launch the availability portal. I can log in and continue my work there. Once I go back to this case, you can see here that it no longer has a prior auth entity needing a selection because I already did that. But now it's going to ask me what the status is based on that portal login. And let's say I was able to find the case, I was able to finalize the status. I can mark it as finalized here, submit it, and then that's where that approval, denial, no auth required will be generated. Or I can select any of these other statuses. Let's say I logged into availability and it happens to be under pair review. I can mark it as such, come back to it later. If it's pending information, we go back to that previous state I mentioned here, and we find out which information is missing and then ask for that information before next steps. Pending initiation, exactly what it sounds like, and then back to triage. So you can see this is why I mentioned in chart number 2 that this is the core state, because all of the statuses can loop back to the triage status minus finalized. Finalized, like I mentioned, it lives there, it doesn't move on from there because it's done. But every other status that represents a pending state can move back to triage because ultimately we want to ensure that the work is constantly moving. Even if that means the payer is not playing ball, we can move it right back to pending information, go back to the ordering physician, go back to the payer, and it's a back and forth game. So that triage state is key in order to manage those various statuses. Does that make
Right.
sense, Stuart? Do you want to simplify that?
It does. I
It's a
mean, I
mouthful.
think you make it any simpler. Yeah, exactly. It's nice that they're agile like that. Obviously, for finalized state, you can't do that. But yeah, I think the interface and the way that you can manipulate it here and still have some control over the automation is key.
Yeah, well said. That's where I was going next. So the automation will automatically do this, but if the payer doesn't have a connection point to over an API to their portal, then a human specialist can also override the system and do this manually. So
Mhm.
again, it's tech enabled services where our team or the tech can do this job. And in the activity log here, I say it's cool, but I'm a nerd. Not everyone finds this cool. You can see date and timestamp of who or what is doing the job. So at any point, the system's going to tell you, is there a user assigned to this or is the system handling this? And if it can handle it, it'll do it completely on its own. And you can see here, the system doesn't have any human intervention throughout these steps. And as of right now, the system didn't need any help. But now that it's in the manual engine, it assigned it to me because the system said, hey, this availability connection, it doesn't have an active API. I need you to log into the portal for me. And as a human specialist, I'm like, oh, I can do that job. And I can submit whatever I need to submit, and it can do a handoff. So you can see here, Jonathan supervisors me, system is system. I did a job here, moved it to the system, and then it assigned it back to me. So it's this constant game of handoff, digital to human specialist until the job is done. All right.
Nice.
I knew that one was going to be a doozy, so we moved past triage. So this next one, pending initiation, this is super simple. It's pending initiation with the pair. There could be a variety of reasons why it's pending initiation, but we are not initiating. This is a follow-up product. So in this example, I have to go call the ordering facility and say, hey, this case has not been initiated yet. Why is that? And based on that response, then I can do next steps for follow up. So let's say it's pending initiation. I call the ordering facility, I hit next here, then I select the status. Either the facility says, sorry, let me do that now. They do that, it's under payer review. They say, sorry, I messed up on that. Let me initiate it right this minute. I mark it as initiated. If they're like, hey, actually, it's you missed it. It is actually a finalized case. I can actually just move it right to that final queue and say, oh, that's my bad. I didn't see, the case in the system. but thank you for reporting that. And then I can mark it as finalized. Once I mark it as finalized, I can go in here and add the status. So let's say it's approved. I can go ahead and add an off code, add an effective date, add an expiration date, put it at a couple months here, and then let's do units authorized. I'm just going to say 3 for the sake of the demo. So you can see here, I called the ordering facility. They said, hey, there is actually an auth on file. You just missed it. I'm like, sorry, my bad. I'm a human. I'm not a robot. Mark it as finalized, mark it as approved, add the relevant information, hit submit. Once I hit submit, it'll move that status to a finalized state and record all of this information below. And then the rendering facility will receive that update. So they'll see status finalized. Here's your approval. Here's the auth code. Here's the effective expiration date and units authorized.
Nice.
I think it's cool.
It's very cool. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, right. So pending information info requested. This one, there's missing information, and I'll follow up on this to ensure that the information is received appropriately. So basically, this is an older case example, but reason code invalid member info. Because the member ID was incorrect, the case wasn't properly submitted. So I'll just keep following up with the ordering facility until we receive that member info. And then once I receive that, I hit next. Again, back to the status, like I mentioned before.
Nice.
All right. A payer review follow up. So I set up a follow up date. I can do the same thing I'm doing with the ordering facility with the payers. I select a date. I keep following up. I figure out what's the holdup. In this example, it's a clinical questionnaire that needs to be completed. I can't complete that. I go back to the ordering facility, says, hey, here's the questionnaire. Can you get that done? And then I'm basically the intermediary until that's finalized. All right. Initiated is initiated, finalized. This is that state I was telling you about. So now you can see the status is recorded, the auth number is recorded. And then if you also need an approval letter, we can also do that by default. So that can be automated. In this example, I'm just going to throw an approval letter in there for you guys. I'll show you how we add an approval letter. So this is not a real patient. Please don't fire me. So approval letter. And this can also be automated, but in this example, the automation was not possible, so I'm manually uploading this. Here's your approval letter. Once I upload, it'll automatically feed that back into the API connection over to the EMR or RIS system, and then it will just live there and live here as well. We support multiple codes as well. This example only has one code, but a finalized state can include multiple approvals, can include a denial, a no auth required. It's not limited in how many codes it can support. And then here's a canceled appointment example. And there's nothing more to do here. It's just recorded forever. So yeah, that's basically everything in a nutshell in terms of the demo. I know it's loaded, but I really wanted to provide a comprehensive look because this is something that people can refer back to and, what did he say, in step 5, and they watch the recording,
Certainly, absolutely. And you can go in more detail because I want to tell everyone and let everybody know that, we do, if you want to see a demo yourself, more than happy, just reach out to us. You can go to our website to facilitate that, request a demo. We'll be more than happy to go in detail and how that's advantageous is because we'll actually do some discovery with you and understanding your workflows, your certain situation, and see about customizing it for that as well. So be just a deeper dive that's specific for you. So if you're interested in that, hey, contact us. We'll be happy to talk to you. Well, I think with that, we're going to now move to the audience questions. We do have one question here for you, Jonathan. How does this workflow handle situations where the referring providers are inconsistent or slow to respond? Does the system just expire the case or are there configurable escalation paths? Like, oh, I've never heard that before, right? That the referring provider is slow to respond.
Yeah. There's always someone that's slow. It could be one of the facilities, could be the payer, but ultimately the standard operating procedure is the step 1 during discovery because like I mentioned, we're very customizable and not all sizes fit all, so we want to ensure that the facility's existing workflow isn't disrupted because staff are still doing their work. Just because Infinex is assisting doesn't mean we're overhauling the entire workflow overnight, you know. So we're really partnering with our customers, and we like to say all of our opportunities and customers are partnerships because we're looking to fill in the gaps of their existing workflow. We're not, you know, a tech startup type that's like, here's this cool software and we're going to take over your system. Like it's not realistic in a, you know, a healthcare services based model. And two, prior auths is simply too complicated to just throw tech at it. So during onboarding, we say, what's your workflow? Where do you need our help? We fill in those gaps. And using our tech enabled services, we establish user defined rules. And based on those rules, our system acts accordingly. So if a facility says, hey, you know, this ordering facility is notorious for causing delays, you let us know what you want us to do with it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're also at the mercy of the ordering facility, right? You know, we can't make them do their job faster. But what we can do is say, how do you want us to handle that? And then day in and day out, we're executing on those SLA agreements. So we establish a process, we follow that process, our system follows that process until that case is finalized.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I don't see any other questions. So with that, and sometimes there's a question as I'm closing out, so I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you, Jonathan, coming on as always. You're definitely a regular guest. I don't even consider you a guest anymore. You're just, you know, you just come on and do your thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So it's not, more solutions to follow. So stay tuned. We'll do more live demos like this in the future, and we have others that you can get on demand. So whether it's prior auth, whether it's eligibility benefits, you know, whether it's our ARDM solution, Dot Capture Plus, I do encourage everyone to go to our website at Infinix.com. You can actually look at a lot of office hours on demand, but our live demos, you would have to request to see that. So please just click request, fill out the form. We'll be happy to send you a link to not only this demo, but also other previous demos that we've done before. We also have case studies out there. We have use cases. We have articles. You can take a look at our solutions. And we'll be looking forward to seeing everyone again. So thanks to everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe to get notified when our next episode is online. For more information for how we can help you increase reimbursements at your company, check out our website at Infinix.com. That's INFINX.com.